The entrance to my opulent seaside villa creaked ajar, unveiling two figures absent from my world for a full dozen years. There stood Eleanor, my child, alongside her spouse Gregory, their lips curved in strained grins, while their stares betrayed a thinly veiled urgency. Their eyes darted swiftly across the lavish setup inside my fresh abode, the supple Italian sofas, the massive 70-inch screen, the breathtaking vista of the sea unfurling beyond me like a vibrant canvas of liberation. "Mom," Eleanor whispered, her tone quivering, "we have to discuss something with you." Over those endless 12 years, this pair had wiped me clean from their existence, acting as though I'd vanished into thin air. No outreach, no holiday summons, no chance to embrace my grandchildren. Yet here they were, materializing at my threshold like specters from bygone days, drawn back solely by the whiff of my newfound wealth after I'd snapped up this multi-million-dollar property outright. I observed them quietly, absorbing every sign of their frayed state. Gregory craned his neck, trying to glimpse further into my coastal haven. Eleanor's threadbare emerald gown hung limp, a relic of brighter times, and her faux leather footwear bore splits that whispered of straitened circumstances. Deep creases of anxiety etched her brow like cracks in parched soil, her fingers fidgeting as she hung on my reply. "Talk," I echoed, my voice steady in a way that caught me off guard. How fascinating! After 12 years of utter quiet, suddenly, conversation appeals to you. Their complexions paled, as though confronting an apparition. Gregory coughed awkwardly, tugging at his rumpled blouse. It was clear they'd rushed here from some setback that hadn't panned out. Their looks couldn't mask the plight that propelled them to my entrance. Through all that harsh neglect, I'd scraped by vending my handcrafted pastries and treats at the local market each Sunday. While they likely savored grand feasts at upscale eateries with kin, I endured the blazing heat, beaming at folks who valued my confections far more than my flesh and blood ever did. My palms had toughened from endless labor, my posture bent under loads of baskets brimming with sugary aspirations, yet my dignity held firm. The scent of warm-baked goodies lingered in my fondest recollections. Delicate cinnamon powder, rich vanilla essence, caramelized coconut flakes just right. Tastes that once perfumed our house back when Eleanor was small and dubbed me the finest baker around. Those sunny eras felt like echoes from a distant existence, tied to a trusting soul who once assumed familial bonds were forever unbreakable. The shift started subtly once Eleanor crossed paths with Gregory at her office soiree, where she toiled as an admin. Initially, he oozed politeness and feigned warmth, dubbing me his cherished in-law with a grin that barely touched his gaze, lauding my holiday dishes all the while scheming to pull her from my orbit. Gradually, though, I spotted the creeping alterations poisoning our ties. If Eleanor floated the idea of weekend visits, he'd conjure some urgent job crisis demanding his focus. My afternoon rings to catch her chatter met his irritable pickup, followed by vows of a callback that evaporated. Texts vanished without trace, invites got mislaid, and outings dissolved at the 11th hour for ever more implausible excuses. The snubs kicked off as mere slips that stung but seemed forgivable. Eleanor's MBA ceremony. "Oh, Mom, we figured you had bigger commitments." The reveal party for her debut child, my unseen grandkid. Super private, just old college pals. That girl's inaugural religious rite. Totally slipped our minds. It all happened in a blur. You get it. Every justification pierced me like a blade swathed in festive wrap and shiny ribbons. I'd force a grin, bob my head, and feign total comprehension. "No sweat, darling. It'll be better soon." But soon never arrived, leaving my line as still as the grave sharing space with my late husband's plot. Evenings stretched on, weekends hollowed out. I prepared meals solo, chatted with framed images on the shelves, and marked my special days with one solitary wick atop a modest pastry from Peterson's shop. He'd inquire after Eleanor, and I'd spin the usual fib. She's swamped in her fresh chapter. Life's like that. But now, poised at the edge of my ideal retreat, the waves murmuring tales in my wake and the briny air invigorating my breath, I recognized their true colors. With a graceful flick of my wrist, I beckoned them inside, noting how their eyes bulged at the spectacle. Surrounded by the opulence of my current life, I couldn't help but notice the stark contrast with their uneasy presence. Sunlight streamed through the massive panes, making the polished Italian marble beneath their feet shimmer and highlighting their tense, diminutive forms. Eleanor trailed after Gregory like an obedient specter, her gaze fixed on the ground as he inspected each lavish furnishing, each painting, every aspect of my transformed world with the barely hidden avarice of an expert evaluator. "Please, take a seat," I offered, motioning toward the pale leather couch that had demanded a fortune far beyond what they'd ever earned, combined over decades. "After all this time apart, I'm sure you have plenty to share." Gregory coughed lightly, slipping into that authoritative stance he reserved for moments when he aimed to command respect. "Annabelle, we're aware it's been some time since our last chat, but 12 years. I cut in sharply, my tone unyielding. "Not just some time, precisely 12 years since you chose to erase me from your lives." At last, Eleanor lifted her eyes, and I spotted the moisture gathering there, yet those displays no longer stirred any sympathy in me. I'd shed far too many solitary tears over the years to let her deliberate sobs sway me anymore. "Mom, that wasn't what we meant to do," she murmured. "Life just got messy. Gregory's career, the children. The children I never even knew," I shot back, as the long-suppressed fury started surging within me. My own grandchildren raised oblivious to the grandmother who would have cherished them without reservation. In those 12 years of imposed isolation, I'd crafted a daily rhythm that anchored my mind. I'd rise at dawn around 5, devoting the same meticulous care to my baked goods as I once had to nurturing Eleanor in her infancy. Pie dough demanded precision. Caramel required vigilant watching to reach perfection, and the oven's timer allowed no room for error. Those formulas turned into both my refuge and my means of survival. Weekends at the local market offered my sole outlet for connection. Fellow elderly women would stop by for my treats, and we'd inevitably chat about our experiences, our distant offspring, our delayed aspirations. Without intending to, Martha, a 72-year-old bereaved woman, emerged as my closest ally. Her grown children had forsaken her, too, post-weddings. She understood intimately the ache of fading from the sight of those who'd once defined your every day. "Once kids start their own households, they act like we parents are irrelevant," she'd remark while picking up a trio of pies for her community. But the instant they want something from us, suddenly we're back in their thoughts. That exchange proved eerily insightful. Now, as I observed Eleanor twisting her fingers in anxiety and Gregory silently tallying the worth of my upgraded existence, Martha's words rang truer than ever. Eleanor's shift had unfolded slowly yet inexorably. In the early days of her union, she'd still reach out now and then, though our exchanges grew rote, laced with uncomfortable pauses. Gregory lurked in the periphery every time, with his throat-clearing interruptions or remarks that sliced through our dialogue like razors. "Your mother's always stirring up some issue," he'd whispered once, assuming Eleanor had ended the call. "She doesn't pester us with her private woes." Her private woes. That's how he'd dismissed my isolation, my instinctive urge to stay linked to my sole child, my longing to join her budding household. All my emotions and requirements got shrunk down to nuisances that disrupted their ideal domestic bliss. Invites to family events trickled in more sporadically until they vanished altogether. It started with Thanksgiving. "This one's going to be low-key, Mom, only us 4. Then the holidays, The little ones are under the weather. Let's reschedule." Birthdays followed suit. Gregory's workload made it all too hectic. Each justification came paired with vague assurances of future plans that never materialized. Eleanor honed a knack for framing every dismissal as logical, every sidelining as brief, every desertion as somehow beneficial for me. "We didn't want to burden you with attending, Mom. At your age, you deserve relaxation and solitude. My relaxation and solitude. As though solitude was a boon I'd requested, as if greeting each day in a hushed flat aligned with my vision of joy, as if preparing meals solo and dining before the screen embodied fulfillment for me. Time slipped by like unread calendar sheets. My habits grew so routine that even the delivery person could predict when I'd be tending the greenery on my tiny terrace. Mondays meant whipping up apple tarts. Tuesdays, assorted gelatin dishes. Wednesdays, those chocolate brownies that flew off the shelves. Thursdays, aroma-filled muffins wafting through my space. Fridays, spiced pumpkin pastries. Saturdays, gearing up for the bazaar. Sundays, the stalls, the chats with those women, the exchanges that briefly eased the emptiness gnawing at my heart. Yet there were stretches of isolation so deep I felt it might swallow me whole. Sleepless nights stretched on, my eyes fixed on the silent telephone. The phone stayed silent, no messages ever coming through. Holidays like Christmas passed with just TV shows and a tiny fake tree that I trimmed all on my own. New Year's came in with a mug of room temperature, bubbly and fresh optimism that perhaps this time we'd all come back together. The deepest hurt hit out of nowhere, like spotting intact families picnicking in the park, or listening to fellow grandmas gush over their grandkids, or strolling past shops full of toys and imagining what my own little ones might pick out. Eleanor had 3 kids, but I only knew them through fuzzy images on online profiles that I spied on using pretend profiles, like some intruder watching my own kin. "Mom." Eleanor's words yanked me into the now. "We realize we screwed up." Screwed up. The phrase shot from my lips like gunfire. Wiping your mom out of existence for over a decade, that's a screw-up. Keeping your kids from their grandma's affection, that's a screw-up. Gregory fidgeted in his chair, starting to grasp that this talk wasn't heading where he'd scripted it. His gaze kept darting around my space, assessing, scheming, plotting his follow-up like the slick controller he'd proven to be, time and again. "Those weren't screw-ups," I pressed on, the raw honesty surging up my chest like molten rock after years bottled inside. "They were deliberate, scheming, heartless choices. You opted to discard me from your world, treating me like outdated junk you'd outgrown." Eleanor started weeping, but her sobs couldn't sway me anymore like they used to. I'd shed too many solitary tears in the dark, questioning my errors, my shortcomings as a parent, why my boundless devotion hadn't held our bond intact. "Mom, just hear us out," Eleanor pleaded through her cries. "Hear what out?" My tone sharpened, beyond my control. "You gonna tell me why I missed my granddaughter's first wobbly steps, why I wasn't around for my grandson's milestone tooth, why I fixed meals for 12 empty holidays while you crafted traditions excluding me?" At last, Gregory chimed in with that patronizing drawl he'd honed to perfection. "Annabelle, we get that you're wounded, but sometimes families require room to develop. It wasn't aimed at you personally." The chuckle that burst from me rang so sour it caught even me off guard. "Not personal, huh, Gregory? You twisted my girl into someone unrecognizable. You sowed distrust in her toward me. You ruled I didn't fit in the world you were crafting." With stinging sharpness, I recalled the exact afternoon Eleanor delivered her ultimatum. It was a drizzly Tuesday back in October, 12 years prior. She showed up at my place wearing a look I'd never witnessed on her. Icy, remote, like she was ticking off a dreaded chore. "Mom, Gregory and I've discussed things." She launched right in, not even touching the coffee I'd brewed for her as usual. "We figure it's wiser if you dial back on seeing us for a bit." Dial back. I echoed, the ground tilting under me. What are you saying? It means you're not invited to our home anymore. It means no more non-stop calls from you. It means we require breathing room to function as a unit without outside meddling. Outside meddling. That's the label my flesh and blood slapped on me, as though I was some nosy outsider butting in where I didn't belong, not the woman who'd nurtured her through 9 months of pregnancy, who'd paced through fevers in the night, who'd juggled extra jobs to fund her education. Eleanor, tell me what I messed up, where I let you down. My words cracked, yet she stayed stone-faced. It's not some fault of yours, Mom. It's about prioritizing my union and the kids. Gregory has to see I'm choosing our core household over everybody. Everybody. That's all I rated in her eyes. Everybody. But Eleanor, I'm your mom, their Nana, not some outsider endangering your setup. Gregory warns that in-laws always stir trouble in fresh unions. He believes setting firm lines early avoids hassle. Gregory warns. Gregory believes. Gregory demands. Somewhere along the way, her words had morphed into his mouthpiece. Her ideas swapped for his. Her spirit rewired to pulse on his command. What about your own voice, Eleanor? Your own views? Your own feelings? She went quiet for what felt like ages, and briefly, I hoped the girl I'd poured my soul into would resurface. But her reply came out flat, scripted like dialogue from a script. I believe Gregory's onto something. I believe it's the right call. For all of us, you included, Mom. You can build your days free of fussing over ours. That marked our final genuine exchange. From then on, Eleanor faded into a shadow who rarely. Occasionally, she'd fire off chilly, impersonal texts. Hope you're doing okay, Mom. Happy birthday. Happy New Year. Robotic notes devoid of warmth or affection, the sort of business blasts to its clients. Those initial months post-split marked the bleakest stretch of my existence. I shed pounds. Sleep evaded me. Optimism vanished. Each dawn I'd stir awake wishing it had all been a bad dream, that Eleanor might ring with regrets, that we'd revert to our old harmony. Yet the line stayed quiet, and the weight of truth pressed down harder with every passing day. It took Martha to pull me back from the brink of total despair. She showed up on my doorstep that Sunday morning after I'd holed up in bed for 3 days straight, skipping showers and surviving on little more than soda crackers and cold brew. Annabelle, rise and shine. You've got 2 paths ahead. Linger here, wasting away for a child who doesn't merit it, or craft a fresh start that honors who you are. Her tone cut sharp, but it carried the weight of honesty. That very afternoon, she pitched in to tidy my place, sort through my baking formulas, and sketch out plans for my upcoming sweets venture. If suffering's on the menu, she remarked as we whipped up the inaugural pie mixture in ages, at least make it count towards something worthwhile. And just like that, my fresh chapter unfolded gradually, achingly, yet resolutely. Each pastry I peddled marked progress toward reclaiming my emotional freedom. Every pleased buyer counted as a quiet triumph. Every bit of cash I pocketed affirmed my worth, regardless of whether my daughter recognized it. Market Sundays turned into my ritual healing sessions. The women snapping up my treats evolved into my adopted circle. We'd swap tales of thankless offspring, unions that fractured kin ties, and the isolation of motherhood in a culture that shelves you once you're deemed obsolete. My boy calls me overly theatrical whenever I gripe about his rare visits. That's what a customer named Joanna shared while sampling my mango gelatin. But it's no exaggeration. It's genuine hurt. It's the fundamental craving to be cherished and appreciated by the very ones you nurtured into being. Here I was in my spacious den, worth more than Eleanor and Gregory's combined holdings. I reflected on each sob, each restless evening, each solitary celebration. And there they sat, diminished and needy, seeking aid from me after over a decade of ignoring my presence. So following 12 years of radio silence, I inquired evenly, What precisely draws you here today? Gregory and Eleanor traded a loaded glance. At last, he cleared his throat once more. Annabelle, honestly, we're navigating a rough patch. A rough patch. I echoed his phrase deliberately, relishing the twist of fate like sour nectar. How remarkably timed that you seek me out amid your troubles, after dismissing my role in your flawless world for 12 years. Gregory fidgeted on the couch, evidently gearing up for the practice monologue from their trip over. His gaze skirted mine while he pieced together the lines meant to melt my resolve. The building firm folded 6 months back, he admitted at length. Our nest eggs gone, the home's facing seizure. Eleanor stepped away from work to mind the little ones since daycare's out of reach. We're crashing with my folks, but they're strapped too. Eleanor bobbed her head urgently, as though validating their woes would summon my sympathy on cue. Mom, the children wonder why no bedroom of their own, why Dad's perpetually irritable, why Mom weeps in the dark. We're at our wits' end. I see, I replied, settling deeper into my fine Italian leather seat. So suddenly, I'm relevant. Suddenly, I matter. I'm kin again. Most opportune. Over those 12 years of exclusion, I'd honed a knack for spotting subtext, unmasking sentiment games, shielding against folks who only circle back when desperate. The market gals had schooled me that kids frequently circle homeward when hardship strikes, not from true affection, but sheer self-interest. That's not it, Mom, Eleanor objected, her tone cracking. We've loved you all along. You've been on my mind constantly. It was merely the situation. I cut her off with a grin that never touched my eyes. Shall we discuss situations then, Eleanor? When your eldest caught pneumonia 8 years past and spent a week in the hospital, where was I? When your middle one fractured his arm during a soccer match 5 years ago, did you reach out? When your baby girl faced school troubles just last year, did it cross your mind to consult her Nana? Every query struck like a dart at her conscience's core. Eleanor recoiled from each, fully aware the responses were identical. She'd overlooked me through all their crises. It was only now, with funds drying up and their stability shattering, that they'd recalled having a mom. We figured you were in a bind money-wise, Gregory grumbled, attempting. They were scrambling to rationalize the irrational. We didn't intend to weigh you down when you were scraping by on those dessert sales. His boldness stunned me into silence for a beat. Not only had they excused shutting me out over my broke status, but they were now brazenly owning up to it, like ditching a family member made perfect sense. Got it, I replied, my voice steady in a way that caught even me off guard. So I wasn't worthy of your time back when I was struggling financially. But once word of my improved fortune spread, I magically became worth a house call. They had no clue about the shift in my circumstances that had upended everything. 3 months back, as I mixed up pies for the weekend market, a phone rang that flipped my world upside down. It was an attorney from the city, breaking the news of my Aunt Joan's passing, my deceased dad's sibling who'd spent 50 years in the United States with barely any contact from our side. Aunt Joan was the family's rebel, the one who'd bolted as a young woman chasing the American dream and never looked back. For years, all we got were sporadic holiday cards at Christmas, but her actual life remained a mystery to us. As it happened, she'd thrived beyond belief. Her estate came with a Los Angeles home that fetched $1 $5 million on the market, plus $500,000 in savings and investments, worth another $2 million. In an instant, I shifted from pinching every cent for baking supplies to holding wealth I'd never imagined. Yet the real gem in that legacy wasn't the cash. It was the note Aunt Joan penned just for me. She described tracking my journey via social media, witnessing my isolation, the way my relatives had ditched me, and my relentless fight to get by. She wrote that she'd chosen me as her sole heir because she spotted her own resilient spirit in me, a woman overlooked and cast aside by kin, yet unbreakable. Annabelle. Her words trembled across the page in the script of someone who'd reached 92. I've watched how your daughter has handled you. I've noted your grace amid the solitude. Use this fortune to spend your remaining days as the royalty you truly are, not the outcast they tried to reduce you to. That windfall let me snag this seaside retreat, somewhere to greet each dawn with the sound of crashing waves and crisp breezes, far from bitter recollections and poisonous ties. After 12 long years, I finally rested without a care. Mom. Eleanor edged closer, but I held up a palm to halt her. We're aware we screwed up badly. We caused you irreparable harm, yet we're kin. Family. Family. I cut in with a sharp, sardonic chuckle. Eleanor. Ties like that hold no weight absent honor, affection, or empathy. You rendered our bond worthless, like discarded trash when it stopped serving your needs. Gregory shifted ahead, striking a pose of feigned openness that screamed rehearsal. Annabelle, we get your hurt. We grasp your fury, but the kids had no part in our blunders. They shouldn't pay for what we did wrong. There was his final play. The offspring, those unfamiliar grandkids, the ultimate tug at my emotions they kept in reserve. They figured invoking the young ones might crack my shell, toughened by a decade plus of disregard. The kids, I echoed, a storm of sorrow and fury brewing inside. Those same little ones raised oblivious to a grandma who'd have adored them without limits. The very children robbed of their Nana's affection, guidance, and nurturing all this time. Eleanor broke into fresh sobs, and this round felt authentic, burdened by true remorse. Mom, we never considered the lasting fallout. Gregory claimed it would strengthen the union, that in-laws like you always stir up trouble. Gregory claimed, I echoed, fixing my gaze on the guy who'd masterminded the rift between me and my girl. Gregory figured, Gregory chose. And what about your say in it, Eleanor? Where did your instincts go? My opinions faded amid vows of wedded bliss and dread of challenging my spouse, she confessed, her candor briefly throwing me off balance. But Mom, I'm seeing now all that slipped away. The little ones wonder aloud why they're missing a grandma, since their pals chatter about theirs and they've got none to claim. Her confession pierced like arrows. Still, I'd trained myself not to let anguish blur my clarity. Over those 12 years, I daydreamed of this reunion. Eleanor's comeback, her owning the error, the opportunity to bond with my grandbabies. But facing it head-on, I saw it arrived overdue and driven by ulterior motives. Do you realize how many of my how many birthdays did I overlook while you were constructing your ideal family, free from any outside meddling? I inquired, my tone growing sharper with every syllable. Are you aware of the countless evenings I lay awake, picturing the sound of their voices, their giggles, the essence of who they might be? Have you any idea how many playthings I purchased and tucked away in a container, anticipating an occasion that simply never arrived? Gregory fidgeted uneasily, evidently uneasy about where the discussion was heading. His scheme to ease emotions wasn't unfolding as planned, and I watched him inwardly plotting his subsequent ploy to sway me. Annabelle, we get that you're wounded. He cut in, using that patronizing tone he'd honed through the years. Yet we have the power to alter everything now. The kids can get to know you. They can share moments with you. We could reunite as a family once more. A family, I echoed, relishing the bitterness in his statement. Do you mean the sort where the grandmother only gets invited when she has funds to fix the messes created by reckless grown-ups? The room fell into a heavy quiet. Beyond the expansive panes, I glimpsed the sea's swells crashing on the cliffs, an enduring symbol of my fresh liberty and fiercely won autonomy. This spot embodied all I'd accomplished on my own, all I'd forged from the ruins of their rejection. Over these past 3 months residing seaside, I'd established an entirely fresh daily rhythm. Each dawn brought me the cries of gulls rather than the quiet ache of isolation. I brewed my coffee in a galley stocked with top-tier gadgets, not in the cramped corner where I'd once scrimped on every cent for essentials. At dusk, I'd stroll the shore, sensing the grains underfoot and the briny breeze through my locks, liberated from the emotional load I'd borne for so long. I'd even begun aiding fellow elder women who'd faced similar desertion by kin. Martha had settled into a flat close by, and we'd formed a modest circle of support for women enduring the same plight. Every Wednesday evening, we'd convene in my parlor to exchange tales, coping tactics for heartache, and naturally, my baked treats. Liberty, Martha remarked in one such session, means grasping that you don't require endorsement from those who wounded you to find joy. Her insight struck me deeply, like a clear chime of reality. For the first time in ages, I existed for my own sake, no longer pining for rings that never sounded, no longer preparing meals for offspring who stayed away, no longer fantasizing about gatherings that lived solely in my mind. Mom. Eleanor edged nearer to my seat, her gaze inflamed from tears. I realize I'm unworthy of your pardon. I know I haven't earned another opportunity, but I vow by my little ones that if you assist us at this moment, everything will shift. I'll change. Change in what way? I responded, holding my inflection icy and steady. Change just long enough to resolve your money woes and no longer require my aid. Change until Gregory once more deems me a hindrance to his flawless union. Gregory rose suddenly, at last revealing his authentic self as his coercion tactics faltered. Listen, Annabelle, I see you harbor grudges, but the fact remains that errors happen in every household. What matters is progressing forward, not dwelling on bygone days. His remark hit like a sharp rebuke. Following 12 years of intentional neglect, he dared to downplay my agony as merely clinging to history, as though my torment were some fleeting fancy instead of the outright result of their heartless deeds. Progress forward. I rose from my chair, my self-respect surging like an iron fortress. Gregory, I've already advanced. I've crafted a fresh existence absent your influence. I've attained serenity without you nearby. I've uncovered my value independent of your affirmation. Eleanor buried her face in her palms, weeping with an anguish that might have shattered me in earlier times. Yet the spirit they'd recognized had withered gradually across 12 years of apathy and emerged renewed, tougher, shrewder, choosier in bestowing its affection. You truly don't grasp it, do you? I pressed on, stepping to the vista of the sea. You arrived here presuming you'd encounter the identical shattered figure you left behind 12 years past. You assumed you'd discover a soul so starved for familial warmth that she'd fork over anything for mere scraps of care. Indeed, in the initial years post their departure, I might well have surrendered everything. I'd have pledged my essence for a single call from Eleanor. I'd have bartered all my possessions for a single day with my grandkids. I'd have pleaded guilty to wrongs I hadn't done, solely to reclaim a role in their world. But the passage of time and the sting of hurt had imparted crucial wisdom on self-respect and inner strength. The gatherings with Martha and the rest had revealed that such familial cast-off was far more prevalent than I'd realized, and that enduring it wasn't just feasible, it marked the start of a truer, more fulfilling existence. For so long, I'd held myself accountable. I admitted this while gazing at the sea. I felt like I'd fallen short as a parent, that I'd been overly attentive, too involved, excessively affectionate. I tormented myself, pinpointing the precise instant when I lost my child. I pivoted to confront them squarely, observing how my statements impacted each one uniquely. Eleanor appeared truly shattered, as though she was at last grasping the full extent of the harm they'd inflicted. Gregory, by contrast, displayed irritation and restlessness, evidently weighing if this tactic merited persistence or demanded a shift in tactics. Yet in time, I grasped the reality. I went on. My daughter didn't slip away due to any mistake on my part. She departed because she selected a partner who viewed an involved mother-in-law as a danger to his insecure ego. She vanished because she prioritized her spouse's validation over her mom's devotion. Eleanor got to her feet, unsteady like my remarks were tangible strikes. Mom, that's not how it was. I never ceased caring for you. I just became mixed up. Gregory convinced me it benefited everybody. He manipulated you, I set her straight. But you permitted it. You opted to accept his deceptions since they felt easier than standing up for your own mother. You favored the fake harmony of a domineering union over the unease of establishing proper limits with your partner. The quiet that ensued after my statement rang loud in my ears. I picked up the wall clock's steady tick, the faint crash of waves far off, Eleanor's ragged breaths. Gregory had shifted into that stiff stance he resorted to when trapped, gearing up for a rebuttal or a calculated withdrawal. "So what exactly are you after from us?" Gregory eventually demanded, dropping all facade of regret or fragility. "Do you expect us to grovel? Are you aiming to shame us as payback for bygone days?" His inquiry laid bare precisely what I'd anticipated from him. This had nothing to do with mending emotional wounds or restoring familial ties. It boiled down to a deal, a bargain where he anticipated shelling out the barest cost to secure the biggest monetary gain. "I don't seek your shame, Gregory," I responded with a calm that caught even me off guard. "What I desire is likely beyond your reach. True regard, unwavering affection, and recognition that you spent 12 years discarding me like trash." Eleanor lifted herself from the couch with shaky motions, drawing near me with outstretched arms as if yearning to make contact, yet holding back. "Mom, I can offer that. I fully accept the damage we inflicted on you. These past few months, I've lain awake nights, replaying each harsh episode, every unanswered call, every overlooked invite. These past few months," I cut in, catching the pointed nature of her admission. "What precisely occurred 3 months back to jog your memory of your forsaken mom?" Her complexion paled instantly, like she'd been exposed in a falsehood. Gregory cast her a cautionary glance, but the damage was done. I'd spotted the flaw in her tale of sudden regret. We. Eleanor faltered, fumbling for suitable phrasing. "You learned of my legacy," I finished for her, sensing every fragment of the enigma slotting neatly together. "Somebody informed you of my fresh home, my improved finances. That's the reason for your visit. Not affection, not sincere penitence, but because you realize the mom you discarded now possesses wealth." Gregory attempted to seize the reins once more, though his veneer of openness had splintered irreparably. "Annabelle, that's false. Sure, we caught wind of your windfall, and we're pleased you're thriving, but we arrived. Why exactly did you show up?" "Because you're in dire straits financially," I broke in with an icy sharpness that sliced deep. "You appeared since you urgently require funds, and I'm your final option. You arrived figuring that 12 years of neglect could be erased with some practiced sobs and hollow vows of mending ties. The revelation of how they'd uncovered my altered circumstances reached me a week prior via Martha. Her relative was employed at the bank processing my inheritance deposit and had caught snippets of talk about the pie vendor who suddenly held millions in dollars. In small communities, rumors spread swiftly, particularly amid such stark shifts in fortune. It was Mr. Peterson from the bakery who spread it to half the locals, Martha had detailed over one of our coffee chats. He claims Eleanor and Gregory have been inquiring about you, probing if the rumors of your sudden riches held water. That detail served as an antidote to any sentimental illusions I might have clung to regarding an honest reconciliation. By the time they knocked on my door, I already understood their true motive and what they desired from me. "Mom, yes, we're aware of your inheritance," Eleanor finally confessed, her eyes brimming with tears. "But that doesn't imply we're only interested in the cash. We're present because we've come to understand the gravest error we ever committed." "Do you grasp that now?" I inquired, heading toward the kitchen to fill a glass with chilled water. You failed to grasp it over the 12 years I wept due to your abandonment. You failed to grasp it during those 3 straight Christmases when I ended up hospitalized with pneumonia, my defenses shattered by isolation. You failed to grasp it when I parted with my bridal ornaments to cover medical bills. Each disclosure detonated like an explosive in the heavy quiet of my sitting room. Eleanor remained oblivious to my health struggles, my money woes, the endless nights when I pondered if vanishing the following morning might prove simpler. In her view, I'd lingered in a suspended state since her exit, dutifully holding out for her comeback. "We had no idea," Eleanor whispered, though her justification rang empty even in her own ears. "You had no idea because you never bothered to inquire," I pointed out. "Over those 12 years, you might have dialed once to learn about your mother's well-being. You might have fired off a quick note to see if I required support. You might have dropped by the flat to confirm I was still breathing." Gregory rose suddenly, evidently irritated that his scheme of sentimental coercion wasn't producing the desired outcome. "Fine, Annabelle. We understand. You're furious. Yet here we are at last. We're seeking pardon, eager to mend what's broken. Doesn't that signify anything?" His words exposed how profoundly he misjudged the harm they'd inflicted. To him, absolution was a prize won by mere appearance and regret, as though a dozen years of neglect could dissolve in a single awkward exchange. "What signifies, Gregory, is the timing of your arrival. You didn't appear when I required you most. You appeared precisely when you began needing me." I approached the pane, gazing out at the rear garden, where my crimson blooms flourished vibrantly in the seaside light. Those flowers symbolized my renewal, my talent for fostering loveliness despite harsh cuts from supposed loved ones. Throughout these years, I pressed on without glancing back at them. I cultivated a straightforward creed regarding connections between people. Actions reveal true character, not utterances. Your deeds demonstrated I held no worth in your worlds during prosperous times. Eleanor approached from behind, and I sensed her quivering near my side. "Mom, we were immature, foolish, swayed by misguided notions of wedlock and kin. But we've evolved. We've gained wisdom. You've hit rock bottom financially," I amended. "Without pivoting, you haven't gained wisdom. You've depleted your resources, and now, craving monetary aid, you abruptly recall your maternal link." The ensuing hush shattered with my phone's ring. Likely Martha, phoning for our routine plant-tending chat. I allowed it to divert to messages, yet the interruption sparked a vital realization. My existence brimmed with fulfillment apart from them. I enjoyed real bonds, direction, serenity. I craved no approval from those who discarded me like trash. "Do you recall the deepest agony amid all this span?" I questioned, at last wheeling to confront them. "It wasn't your exclusion from festivities. It wasn't the ceased outreach. It was the dawn that I cherished you without limits, while your affection toward me came with unspoken stipulations." Eleanor dissolved into fresh sobs. Yet this round, her weeping appeared to stem from a profounder, truer source. "Mom, I cherish you. I've cherished you eternally. It's merely that. I permitted outsiders to persuade me that affection burdened my union, and now that your union faces monetary turmoil," I noted, "abruptly that affection poses no burden. How opportune." Gregory had stayed mute recently, but I observed his thoughts churning, scheming, assessing, hunting a fresh approach. He eventually voiced, shifting to a blunter, less scheming manner. "Listen, Annabelle, let's cut the pretense. We require monetary support. You possess funds. We're kin, despite prior conflicts. Isn't mutual aid in hardship the essence of family?" His stark candor felt oddly invigorating following such feeble theatrics of sentiment. At least we were finally voicing their true expectations plainly. "It's fascinating you invoke the notion of familial reciprocity," I responded with a grin, devoid of any warmth. Where did that familial ethos reside when I toiled through 14-hour shifts, peddling sweets to endure? Where lurked that communal loyalty when I weighed meds against meals? Do you realize what's the most pitiful aspect? What's your take on all of this? I pressed on, as decades of bottled-up hurt sharpened into a razor-sharp insight that sliced through everything. Had you shown up a year earlier, back when I was holed up in that cramped flat, scraping together pennies for basic groceries, I likely would have thrown my arms around you in relief. Tears of happiness would have flowed. Yes. I'd have let go of every grievance. No strings attached. I'd have whipped up meals for you nonstop, collapsing from fatigue in the process. Eleanor buried her face in her palms, her crying now joined by shudders racking her frame, revealing the depths of her despair. Gregory, meanwhile, stiffened into a guarded stance, resembling a trapped creature sizing up potential exits. Yet that fortune provided me with something absent throughout those 12 years of neglect. I proceeded, pacing deliberately across my lounge like a magistrate pronouncing judgment. It offered me viewpoint. It granted me the liberty to decide who merited a place in my world and who didn't. It empowered me to utter refusal without dreading the fallout. In my initial days settling into this home, I devoted countless hours pondering precisely this scenario. What if Eleanor and Gregory turned up on my doorstep? How might I respond? Could I uphold my self-respect, or would I fold at the mere prospect of reclaiming my child? Martha had guided me through those profound contemplations. "Wealth doesn't alter your core self," she'd remarked while we sipped tea on my fresh balcony, "yet it shifts perceptions, how people view you and how you view yourself. So will you leverage that fresh outlook to grow savvier, or repeat the heartfelt blunders of before?" Her insight proved eerily prescient. Here I was confronting the very situation we'd unpacked. I saw that the wealth had transformed me, though not as Eleanor and Gregory anticipated. It hadn't rendered me more forgiving toward those who'd wounded me. Rather, it had honed my discernment about who warranted my attention and emotional investment. Mom. Eleanor edged closer once more. "I get your fury. I grasp your suffering. But isn't a fresh start something everyone merits? Can't familial bonds eclipse any bygone error?" "A fresh start," I echoed, relishing the bitterness in her phrasing. "Eleanor, over those 12 years, you squandered countless moments to set things right. Each dawn brought a chance to reach out to your mom. Every birthday, holiday, and Mother's Day offered a reminder of the unwavering love from your kin." Gregory fidgeted uneasily, evidently weighing whether to step in or allow Eleanor to persist with her ploy of heartfelt pleading. His gaze kept roving over my home, appraising, computing, likely gauging the sum required to bail him out and the maximum they could request without appearing overly opportunistic. "The divide between a fresh start and an endless series of them," I went on, "lies in intent. Fresh starts stem from affection. Endless ones arise from exigency. You're not here out of affection. You're driven by monetary crisis." Eleanor sank onto the couch, as though my statements had struck her like tangible impacts. "You're correct," she whispered, her tone fractured. "Utterly correct. We're utter frauds. We're self-centered. We embody all that you describe." Her confession could have stirred pity, were it not laced with the clear hope that owning her faults would swiftly yield my absolution, and crucially, my monetary aid. "Owning your faults marks just the initial phase, Eleanor," I clarified, with the measured calm of an instructor breaking down fundamentals for a lagging pupil. The next phase involves embracing the repercussions of those faults. And the repercussions of forsaking your mother for 12 years don't vanish merely because you're strapped for cash today. I moved to the kitchen and began preparing a pot of coffee, not to extend their stay, but to take a breath amid the bizarre unfolding. After years of fantasizing about such an encounter, the actuality felt far chillier and more tactical than my visions. As the brew percolated, snippets of heated murmurs drifted from the lounge between Eleanor and Gregory. I couldn't discern specifics, but the inflection screamed plotting and bargaining. They were adjusting tactics, hunting for fresh levers of influence. I came back bearing a tray with one lone mug of coffee. I claimed my preferred seat and sipped leisurely, watching them as if examining subjects under a microscope. "Won't you pour us some?" Gregory inquired, his annoyance evident at my breach of customary warmth. "No," I stated flatly. "This isn't a friendly gathering. It's a bargaining session, and in those, courtesy suggests parity. We hold no such parity." Eleanor appeared truly stung by my detachment, while Gregory's face betrayed a grudging admiration, as though he was at last realizing that the woman sitting across from him wasn't the one they'd left behind over a decade ago. "Okay," Gregory stated, shifting to a straightforward approach. "Let's cut to the chase. We're short $100,000 to rescue the home and rebuild our lives. We realize you've got the funds. We know blood ties us together. So what exactly do you want to hear to step in and assist?" His words came across as purely commercial, stripped of any real feeling, nearly drawing a chuckle from me. He'd boiled down 12 years of familial neglect into a straightforward deal-making session. What special phrases did he imagine would unlock my wallet? "What I require," I responded, after taking a deliberate pull from my coffee, "is the unvarnished reality behind why you cut me out of your world, not those polished tales of immature errors or outside pressures, the actual facts." Eleanor and Gregory traded loaded looks. Evidently, they'd rehearsed multiple angles of their tale, but raw candor like this hadn't factored into any of them. "The reality," Eleanor whispered, "is that Gregory persuaded me you were a detriment to our union." "A detriment? In what way?" I probed, refusing to let her dodge with vague terms. Gregory jumped in, sensing her defensive ploy was falling flat. "I felt you were overly involved, too vocal with your views. I believed you meddled in our choices as partners." "Meddled how, precisely?" I kept pushing, intent on pulling out every detail. "You constantly offered advice on parenting the children, managing finances, even picking our residence," Gregory confessed, the admission visibly weighing on him. "And Eleanor always valued your input. She weighed your thoughts over my own every time." There it lay, exposed, the raw core. Gregory had viewed my guidance as a rival to his complete authority over Eleanor. He couldn't abide her drawing insight or backing from anyone but him. "So, you sidelined me because I offered a different perspective in Eleanor's world." I summed it up. "You erased me since my unwavering devotion to my daughter challenged your desire to be her only guide and affirmation." The hush that followed validated my insight. Eleanor raised her gaze at last, her eyes moistened, carrying a look of delayed clarity. "Mom, I see it now. Gregory was mistaken. I recognize I require your guidance in my days. I grasp that I committed the gravest error of my life by prioritizing him over our bond." Her statement rang true, yet it arrived 12 years overdue and amid the worst possible circumstances. Spotting one's errors felt simple when those errors were now wrecking your bank account. "You grasp now that you require my guidance in your days," I echoed her phrasing deliberately. "But what you truly seek is my guidance to approve that $100,000 loan." Eleanor recoiled at the sharp accuracy of my point. Gregory, however, grew visibly frustrated by my rejection of their scripted remorse. "Annabelle, stop with these mind games," he burst out at last, unveiling his authentic nature for the first time that day. "We understand you're furious. We know we erred, but we're present today, seeking aid, ready to atone. What else could you possibly demand?" His flare-up was precisely the reaction I'd anticipated. The instant his facade of fragility crumbled, exposing the domineering, scheming individual he'd always been. the very one who'd swayed Eleanor into seeing a parent's affection as a hazard to her wedlock. "What I demand, Gregory," I countered with a serenity that sharply opposed his fury, "is beyond your power to deliver. I want those 12 years of my existence returned. I want to have shared moments with my grandchildren from infancy. I want to have witnessed their initial strides, their earliest utterances, their debut school moments." I rose from my seat and approached the bookcase, holding the handful of family snapshots I'd preserved from my earlier days. I selected one specific image, Eleanor at age 5, beaming toothlessly, clinging to my leg with unfiltered devotion in her gaze. "This child adored me without limits," I declared, displaying the photo to them. "This child named me her closest companion, her champion, her top choice in the entire universe. What became of this child? Eleanor." Eleanor stared at the image, her face twisted in such profound anguish that I briefly worried she'd collapse. That child matured into a fragile adult who permitted a doubtful partner to shatter her life's greatest treasure. Her response caught me off guard with its stark forthrightness. It marked the afternoon's first instance of her truly comprehending the depth of her forfeiture, not merely what she hoped to reclaim to fix her immediate woes. "Precisely," I affirmed, sliding the photo back into place. "And now that fragile adult seeks out the parent she discarded, not from rediscovered resilience," and her Gregory rose to his feet suddenly, his irritation evident in the sharp movement as the discussion veered off course. "Listen, Annabelle," he snapped, "perhaps you hit the nail on the head early on. You're overly theatrical, excessively intricate. It might have been wiser to steer clear of this whole mess of feelings after all." His outburst felt like an unforeseen boon. Following an afternoon of subtle maneuvering on my part, he had at last revealed his authentic self, validating every doubt I'd harbored about him for so long. "Ah, there you are," I remarked, a sincere smile breaking across my face for the first time that day, the true person emerging. The individual who'd persuaded Eleanor that a mother's affection amounted to mere sentimentality, the one who couldn't abide his spouse securing her own financial backing. Eleanor gazed at Gregory, her features twisting into mounting dismay, as though confronting a long-ignored truth that had lingered right before her eyes for years. "Gregory," she whispered shakily, "do you honestly believe my mother is overreacting just because she's wounded after we left her behind for 12 years? Eleanor, resist letting her pull your strings once more," Gregory countered, slipping into that patronizing demeanor he'd likely wielded to dominate her over the course of their bond. "She's toying with your sentiments to stir up remorse." "No," Eleanor declared, her resolve shining through unlike anything displayed that afternoon. "She's not toying with me. She's voicing the valid anguish we've inflicted on her. She's forthright about the fallout from our awful choices." I observed this back and forth like an audience member absorbed in a familiar production. It was captivating to witness how monetary hardship was starting to fracture the dominance Gregory had meticulously constructed through the years. "Eleanor," I interjected gently, "do you see that even in this dire instant, your spouse prioritizes dictating your response over mending the harm they've wrought on me?" Eleanor pivoted toward Gregory, viewing him afresh, as if encountering an unfamiliar figure. "She's correct," she breathed. "Right here, right now, he's fixated on proving his point instead of making amends." "Eleanor, stay clear-headed," Gregory pressed on, yet his tone had shed the assured command it once held steadfastly. "We must concentrate on addressing our issues, not rehashing old grievances." "Our issues," I echoed, catching the deliberate phrasing. "Gregory, your monetary woes aren't mine to bear. Your insolvency falls squarely on you. Your failure to sustain a thriving enterprise isn't for me to fix." A heavy quiet descended over the space as my statement sank into the harsh truth of their predicament. Eleanor appeared to be undergoing a delayed epiphany, while Gregory wrestled visibly with shifting tactics of influence. Moreover, I pressed ahead, suppose I chose to offer financial aid. What assurance could I possibly claim that you wouldn't vanish from my world anew once your troubles ease? Eleanor parted her lips as if to object, then clamped them shut upon grasping her lack of a solid retort. The fact remained. No such promise existed, and every soul present recognized it. Over these 3 months residing here, I went on, I've cultivated a serene and fulfilling daily rhythm. I rise at my leisure. I dine on whatever suits my taste. I savor the evening skies from my balcony. I delve into volumes I've long yearned to explore. I lend support to fellow women who've endured ordeals akin to my own. I drifted back toward the pane, eyeing the ocean swells crashing steadily upon the stones. I've come to appreciate that inner tranquility holds unmatched worth. I've realized that deliberate isolation far outshines harmful companionship. Mom, Eleanor approached from the rear, her words a faint murmur. What must I undertake to secure your pardon? What steps are needed to reclaim your affection? I wheeled around to meet her stare, detecting in her gaze an anguish that transcended their fiscal turmoil. For the initial time, she conveyed an inkling that she'd forfeited far more than wealth or assets. Eleanor, I responded, a profound sorrow washing over me unexpectedly. My pardon isn't up for barter, and my affection never truly faded. The issue lies in how you reduced our connection to a mere commercial exchange, the instant you deemed me worthwhile only for my utility. Spotting his grip on the scene slipping away, Gregory mounted one final, frantic bid. Annabelle, without your assistance, the kids will endure hardship. They'll forfeit their residence. They'll switch educational settings. They'll face destitution. Could you truly rest easy with the knowledge that your grandchildren are in distress? This closing plea was the ace he'd held in reserve, the guilt tied to the youngster's welfare, a deliberate ploy aimed at striking at any grandmother's tenderest spot. Gregory, I answered, with a composure that caught even me off guard. The kids will face hardship due to their parents' reckless choices, not on my account. Due to my unwillingness to pull them out of the fallout from their own choices. You brought about this mess yourselves, didn't you? Not me. Eleanor started weeping once more, yet now her sobs carried a profound realization of all that she'd genuinely forfeited across those long years. The kids will end up hurting, I went on, each phrase lingering in the room like an unalterable verdict. But they'll face the repercussions of parents who valued ego above familial bonds, who picked dominance over closeness, who deemed wealth superior to human ties. Eleanor crumpled fully onto the couch, crying with a fervor that might have shattered me back then. Yet the heart pulsing within me these days had been tempered by the flames of 12 years' neglect and had come out tougher, sharper, more discerning. Mom, she breathed amid her tears. What should I do? Please tell me how to mend this. Eleanor, I answered with a profound yet peaceful sorrow. Certain aspects of life simply can't be repaired. Some choices leave lasting scars. You chose to deem me unworthy of staying in your world when times were smooth. You can't now demand that I see you as worth saving when everything's unraveling. Gregory rose abruptly, his irritation boiling over into outright rage. You know what, Annabelle? You're spot on. You were in error right from the start. You kept meddling in our union nonstop. Eleanor's far better without your theatrics, without your endless craving for spotlight, without your psychological tactics. His outburst served as an ultimate revelation. Following hours of facades and schemes, he'd at last revealed his core self, a man so lacking in confidence that he had to cut his wife off from every form of affection and backing just to feel in charge. Thank you, Gregory, I responded with a sincere grin. Thanks for verifying precisely your nature and why I wisely chose against aiding you. Eleanor gazed at her spouse in sheer dismay and delayed insight. Gregory, did you actually just label my mother's valid anguish as theatrics? Did you truly admit to scheming against me to drive her out? Eleanor, don't allow her to muddle your thoughts with her tricks, Gregory pressed on. But his tone had shed every trace of command. We require that, Cash. We must preserve our household. Our household, I echoed, heading for the entrance. Got ruined 12 years back when you viewed a caring mother-in-law as more of a threat than emotional ruin. Now you're harvesting the results of what you planted. Eleanor rose unsteadily, trailing me to the doorway with hesitant strides. Mom, I beg you. I promise. If you assist us this time, it will all change. I'll transform. I'll establish limits with Gregory. I'll protect our bond. Eleanor, I stated, gripping the doorknob, you're vowing to alter under crushing monetary strain. You're pledging shifts you've failed to achieve in 12 years of wedlock. Why would I trust that this turmoil will suddenly make you finer individuals? Gregory drew nearer, shifting into a more hostile posture. Annabelle, you'll come to rue this choice. We'll spread word across the entire community about how you deserted your flesh and blood in their hour of desperation. We'll ensure all learn the true nature of mother you embody. His warning was utterly foreseeable, nearly drawing a chuckle from me. It marked the final frantic ploy of a schemer stripped of influence, the bid to tarnish my standing in society. Gregory, I countered with a composure that plainly unsettled him. The community already grasps precisely the parent I am. They recognize that for 12 years I toiled relentlessly, peddling sweets until I was spent, just to endure. They know I never uttered a negative word about you amid your desertion. They know I upheld my self-respect amid hardship. I swung the door open broadly, letting the ocean gusts infuse my space with crisp, cleansing vitality. What they're about to uncover is the sort of offspring and son-in-law you represent. They're set to learn how you handled a devoted mother over 12 years and how you only appeared on her doorstep once funds were required. Eleanor halted at the doorway, pivoting for one final glance my way. In her gaze, I detected an element absent for ages: esteem. Esteem blended with anguish, with remorse, with a tardy grasp of her forfeitures. Mom, she whispered, I wish someday you might pardon us. I hope eventually we discover a path to mend this vast harm. Eleanor, I responded with a grief stretching over decades of wounds. Pardon isn't tied to erasing history. It's linked to releasing oneself from bitterness's burden. I've already achieved that liberation. What you lack isn't my pardon. It's grasping how to dwell amid the outcomes of your actions. Gregory departed ahead, plainly enraged and vanquished. Eleanor trailed him languidly, glancing over her shoulder repeatedly as though yearning to voice more. Yet the phrases eluded her. I observed them proceed to the "in their weathered old jalopy." Those tiny, unremarkable shapes faded against the endless sea. After a dozen years, they'd slipped out of my world just as they'd crept in, chasing their own gains without ever giving anything real back. I shut the door softly and headed back to the living room, where the quiet wrapped around me like a gift. No yelling, no scheming, no tearful outbursts, just serenity. I grabbed a chilled glass of that special white wine I'd held onto and stepped out onto the deck. The sunset was dipping low, brushing the heavens with warm golds and soft pinks that danced on the gentle swells. My cell buzzed. Martha calling. How'd it play out with those surprise guests? She inquired, her voice carrying the insight of someone who's weathered the storm before. Right on cue, I said, savoring a swallow as calm seeped deep into me. They showed up chasing cash, not affection. It just proved what we already suspected. And you, how's it sitting with you? Her words hung as I gazed at a gull soaring smoothly above the surf. Free, Martha. Utterly, totally free. Later that evening, post-chat with her, I strolled the shoreline beneath the starry sky, cool grains shifting underfoot, the steady lap of water, the boundless deep reaching forever. It all underscored my pick, a path of tranquility over tangled family knots. Over the next few days, word of Eleanor and Gregory's drop-in buzzed around town, just like I'd figured. But folks' responses flipped Gregory's hopes upside down. The gals at the market voiced their backing, plenty spilling tales of kids who only surfaced for handouts. "You handled it perfectly, Annabelle," Mr. Peterson from the bakery said when I stopped in for loaves a week on. "A mom with self-respect shows her offspring how to honor her in kind." 2 months down the line, a text pinged from Eleanor. Straightforward, no games, no asks. "Mom, I'm in counseling, figuring out poisonous ties and solid limits. Someday, when I'm fit to be the kid you merit, maybe we could reconnect. Love you." I held off on responding right away, tucked it away instead, and pressed on with my fresh routine. Dawn tending the garden, midday aiding fellow seniors, nights in quiet reflection. Perhaps Eleanor would one day claim her own strength. Perhaps she'd master drawing lines with Gregory. Perhaps we'd forge a bond rooted in equality, not frantic pleas. But for now, should that moment arrive, I'd keep embracing my rich, honorable days encircled by the timeless sea that daily whispered, "Certain tides defy taming, and true smarts come from steering toward gentler flows." The inheritance brought plenty, but its greatest boon wasn't the home or the indulgences. It was the power to decide who merited my hours, my effort, my heart. And I'd picked well. If my tale resonated, toss a super thanks my way to fuel more like it. Much appreciated ahead of time. Now you, what's your move in a spot like this? Spill your take in the comments. I'm eager for your views. Also, where'd you catch wind of this one? Craving more real-life yarns? Hit like, sub to the channel, tons more await. Warm embraces, and catch you soon.